come to the 8th poem of Beehive, On Killing a Tree by Jeev Patel. On killing a tree should it be, or on cutting a tree? What do you think? Are you killing the tree? Is it a human? Is it a living thing? Or do you just cut a tree, just like you cut paper? Well, this is something that you need to think upon. So let's see, this is what the poem is going to tell you all about. But before we move on, let's talk about the poet himself. So Jeev Patel is an Indian poet and playwright. His first play was called Princess and it was performed in 1971. Playwriter, so he would write plays. He briefly worked as a medical examiner in rural Gujarat before moving back to Mumbai. He's also a painter, multi-talented. As one of the contemporary Indian artists, he has been part of exhibitions around the world. So you see what a multifaceted, multi-talented personality we have and his poem. Well, while I go on reciting the poem, as always, your task is to ponder upon every word, every line. Think what you can think, what the message the poet is trying to give us. Yes, and then we shall match it with the theme and the explanation that follows these slides. So yeah, let's move on. And of course, the rhyme scheme, let's not forget. So you have to tell me the rhyme scheme as well. So, it takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It has grown, slowly consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. So hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs, miniature boughs, which, if unchecked, will expand again to former size. No, the root is to be pulled out of the anchoring earth. It is to be roped, tied and pulled out, snapped out on killing a tree, or pulled out entirely, out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed, the source white and wet, the most sensitive hidden for years inside the earth. Then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. What is done? You finally killed a tree, but after this process, not the earlier one. You will see what I mean. So, the poem On Killing a Tree was one of the poems of his poetry collection named Poems, published in 1966. This collection was launched by Nissim Ezekiel. Most of the Patel's poems center, that means they talk about the human body. On Killing a Tree too is one such poem. Killing a tree, human body, what connection? The poem is set on a very visual plane. You can actually visualize the whole thing. The descriptions are vivid. They are very clear. You can exactly imagine what's being told. And the mood is sad. Of course. I mean, undoubtedly, you are killing a tree. How happy can anyone be killing a tree? There also hangs a sense of darkness upon the poem. The pain felt by the trees, as imagined by Patel, dominates the mood of the poem. Yes, this is what dominates, the pain which is felt by the trees. Yes, that sadness, that darkness hovers around, and that actually is the dominating feature, the mood of the poem. So, let's talk, before we move on, the rhyme scheme. So, did you actually get any rhyming words? If I do it here itself, did you get any rhyming words at the end of every line? No. Can you see? Look at the last word of every line. Nothing is actually rhyming. So in that case, the poem is a free verse. Yes? because it has no rhyme scheme, no rhyme pattern. Now, moving on to the poetic devices. So, in the entire poem, whatever the lines have been used, so which figures of speech have been involved? You have alliteration, a repetition of the initial letter. Initial letter means the first letter. So, if I am saying, if I talk, what do you mean by the initial? So, if I say Vimla, that's my name. So, V is the initial, the first letter. So, it is the repetition of the initial letter, which is basically generally a consonant of several words, marking the stressed syllable in a line of the poem. So, as always, I always tell you this, Betty bought a butter, the butter was too bitter. So, b. Now, this is being done in the same line. So, alliteration, b. The first letter of every word is being repeated. Climax. Successive words, phrases or clauses are arranged in an ascending order of importance or in successive stages of growth. So as it keeps growing in levels of importance or maybe stages of growth, that's climax. Enjambment, we already know these are the running lines of poetry. So one line runs to the other. It's a continuous line that adds to the meaning from one to the next without using any kind of punctuation to indicate a stop. Imagery, that's the author's words create a vivid mental picture or physical sensation. So this is basically, you are using your senses, yeah, your five senses, and you're imagining something. That time it is imagery. Metaphor is a word or a phrase which is used to represent something else. A word is being said, but actually it represents something else. We shall see how. Personification, very obvious, when a non-living thing is given the human quality of a human. Yeah, that time we call it a personification. And repetition is the same word is repeated more than once in the same line. Again, I'm bringing it to your notice. Alliteration is the repetition of the first letter of the word, and repetition is the repetition of the same word in the same line. That's how they are different. Please keep that in mind. Now, let's move further to the first 18 lines of the poem. Okay, we always need to know the hard words. What do they actually mean? Because if you don't know them, you will never get the actual essence of the poem, the real meaning of the poem. Yeah? So, it takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. What do you mean by jab? Sudden rough blow. Not one sudden rough blow can actually kill a tree. It has grown slowly, consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust. What do you mean by the crust? It's the outermost layer of something. The crust. Generally, when we bake a cake, don't you see that the crust is soft? Or when you make something crispy, is it very crispy? You get to know the crust. So that's the outermost layer of something. Absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. What do you mean by leprous hide? It is the uneven color of the surface of the trunk of a tree. Have we all noticed the trunk of a tree? Yes, it's somewhere brown and white and creamish, it's brown and creamish mostly. You can see it's like a leprous hide. The skin, hide is basically the skin. The trunk, the outer skin, the outer layer, it is the color of a leprous. Yeah. Actually, if you must have come across, leprous is coming from leprosy. People who suffer from leprosy, they have a brown and white skin sort of thing. They have that. So, this actually resembles that. So, they are calling it a leprous hide. The skin is somewhat similar to that, the look. So, hack and chop. Hack as in cut roughly with heavy blows. But this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal. And from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. Miniature boughs. Miniature boughs as in miniature are the small or the tiny reproductions. Smaller version. If you have seen those who have been to Taj Mahal maybe, you see the replicas, you see the small Taj Mahals, that's the miniature version, the smaller version. So likewise, small or tiny reproduction, and boughs as in the main branch of a tree, that's the miniature boughs, which if unchecked will expand again to former size. Former size as in the way it was before you cut it, the same size. So let's see in detail what they actually mean. Now, it tells us that killing a tree is not easy. Again, I'm bringing the same thing to your notice. Killing a tree, it's not cutting a tree. You know what? The tree actually has been, given, it is like a human. It has been compared like this. So let's see further. It is very time consuming. A jab of a knife is not enough. That sudden rough blow is not enough. A tree grows straight out of the earth. It comes out of the earth, we are all aware, nourishing itself on the nutrients found in the earth. How does it feed itself? Does anyone feed a tree? No. We are all aware that where the tree grows, it's right on the earth, right? And the roots are scattered below the earth, right? It's right under there. And from there, the roots pull in all the nutrients and it grows up, right? And the food is provided to the entire tree. Now, that's a whole system, right? Now, here, along with the years of sunlight, water and air, yeah, they also get sunlight, water and air and the nutrients from there. This is how a tree is fed. And even though the bark looks irregular and scaly, bark as in the trunk of a tree, it looks irregular, it's never smooth, it's very rough types, and scaly, it's like, the scales. Leaves and branches sprout out of it. Even though that thing is so irregular, yet you have leaves and branches coming out of it. The hack of a knife or an axe or chopping off a bough is not enough to bring a tree down. It's not. You cannot do that. These jabs may inflict pain on the tree, but the pain is not enough to kill it. It is painful. Those jabs, those blows they definitely hurt the tree. The bleeding bark, they hurt, and how does the tree respond to that? Now, just like when a human is hurt, even if you just slit your finger by chance, when you're cutting vegetables and it starts bleeding, yeah, your finger starts bleeding. Likewise, the bleeding bark, the part where it has been wounded or where a bough is chopped off, will heal with time. Now, when you are cutting a tree, when you are actually using, an axe also maybe, there is a white liquid called sap that comes out. It comes out of the tree when you actually do it with the axe. Now, that is being compared to the blood of a human. Yeah, just like a human bleeds when it gets a cut, likewise, when a tree gets a cut, it pains and it cries, it bleeds. How? We come to know from the sap, which is being compared to blood. Yes, and new green twigs will grow again. Now this bough, you think you have cut off one branch, two branches, but the trunk is still there. You haven't uprooted the tree. You haven't brought the tree out from the earth. You are just cutting the top layers. You think that's going to stop the tree from growing again? No, it's not going to stop. Again, you will have new green twigs growing up. Boughs chopped off will be replaced by new boughs which will grow into their former size. Those branches which you have cut off will again grow. They will grow back again. In fact, they will grow back into their former size. The size it was before, yeah, when you chopped it, the same size it will go back. It will grow back into it. Now, if I talk about the poetic devices that have been used in these lines. So, in the first 9 lines, it is alliteration. Now, alliteration takes time to It is a repetition of the first letter, the initial. Yes. Personifications, there are 3 personifications. It has grown. Yeah, the tree has grown. It is being given the human quality, slowly consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing. So all these actions which are performed by humans are the tree is being personified. It is being given the human quality. Sprouting leaves. Do leaves sprout? Right? Again, here they are being personified. Right? So there you have personification. Enjambment, we remember it's a running line. Right? It is a continuous line. It comes on the next line, and the meaning is not complete till you don't do it. So just see this. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It stops here. So the line is actually running. Yes, it is continuing. Running as in continuing. So it is enjambment. There's no particular pause. Then imagery, slowly consuming the earth. You can imagine it. You know, you can imagine that scene. It is slowly consuming the earth. Yeah. So you are using your senses to imagine it. Yes. So it is imagery. Then we talk of metaphor. And out of his leprous hide. I told you this leprous hide. Hide is the skin. Yeah. Now here leprous, I told you earlier it was leprosy. Okay. The skin of a patient who is suffering from leprosy. So basically it's talking about, it's comparing that. Right. It's representing that skin which is of a patient suffering from leprosy. So it is metaphor. It is actually referring to something else. It is representing something else. Yes. So these are the figures of speech here. Going to the next set of lines of 10 to 18, you have enjambment. So hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. It is a continuous line. It comes to the next, but then there is no punctuation to show a pause. So it is a running line. It is a continuing line. Then you also have enjambment here. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. So here you have a continuous line, right, without a pause. Likewise, miniature boughs which if unchecked will expand again to former size. This whole thing is one line, but it is showing on different lines, but they mean the same. Mean the same as in it is one set of line. It's just one line, and so it is not giving any punctuation. It's not showing any pause. So it is an enjambment. Yeah. Metaphor, the bleeding bark will heal. Bleeding bark as in, is the bark actually bleeding? No, they are talking about the sap that comes out of the liquid. Yeah, out of the tree, out of the trunk. So the bleeding bark is actually representing the sap. It's not literally bleeding, but yes, it's talking about the liquid that comes out of the trunk when you chop it. Personification, again, the bleeding bark will heal. Bleeding bark. Can a bark bleed? Bleeding is the human quality. Will heal. Can the bark heal? Or do humans, the wounds heal up? So here again, it is being personified. That's the reason it's personification. Which if unchecked will expand again. Here they are talking about the tree regrowing. Yes. So here it is being given the human quality of actually expanding. Yeah. Growing up again rather. So in that case, it is personification. So I'm sure these poetic devices are pretty clear to you, right? They have been repeated quite a few times. So I'm sure by now you must have actually understood it. Now moving further to the last set of lines, 19 to 35, no. The root is to be pulled out of the anchoring earth. What do you mean by the anchoring earth? Trees are held securely with the help of the roots in the earth. How does a tree stand? The roots spread, they get a grip, right? And that's how the tree stands. If the roots are weak, so in any storm or a heavy, during the rainy season when you have strong winds blowing, the tree gets uprooted. But if it is nice and firm, if the roots are nicely spread, no tree will get uprooted. Yes, so this is called anchoring earth. Yeah, it is to be roped, tied and pulled out, snapped out as in chopped out, or pulled out entirely out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed. The source white and wet. The source as in right at the bottom, the roots. The most sensitive hidden for years inside the earth. That has always been hidden. You cannot see the roots, but that's the source. It's always white and it's wet. Why? Because it keeps absorbing moisture, the water, right, from under the ground. That is the reason it is nice, white and wet. Then the matter of scorching and choking. What do you mean by that? The drying up of the tree after being uprooted. The tree has come out with the roots. Yes, it is uprooted. It is out of the, the surface of the earth along with its roots. In sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. So you see, now after it has been uprooted, then it is the process where you can actually say the tree has been killed. Yes? So let's see, the explanation tells it all. The poet explains how a tree could be killed. He says to kill a tree, its root has to be pulled out. You have to actually pull out the roots. The root, which is the source of a tree's life, must be pulled out of its cave, that's the shape down there, in order to mortally harm the tree. And actually, you want to actually kill the tree. By earth cave, the poet means the point deep inside the earth where the root is attached, where actually the roots have spread. That is the place they call it the earth cave. Once the center, the life source, the root is exposed, as in when you uproot the tree and the roots are out, they have been exposed, the tree becomes vulnerable, ready to die. The source is described as white and wet, probably alluding to tree sap, which is a white liquid. We are all aware. The sap, like I told you, when you chop a tree, the sap comes out. So that's the liquid which keeps moving. The exposed life source, that is the roots, which when left open to the sun and air. Now when you leave the tree just like that with the roots exposed to sun and air, will be scorched due to the heat. They will dry out because the sun's rays fall on it, and the air won't be able to reach the scorched places to relieve it of the heat. The air cannot reach there. Slowly it will start to become brown, the roots, with all the softness fading out, leaving it hard, lifeless remainder behind. So once it starts browning, once it starts hardening, the liquids are out. In that case, what is left is a hard, lifeless remainder. It is totally lifeless. It stops functioning. Then nothing happens to it. It's as good as dead. With time, it will start to wither. It will lose all its freshness, become dry and bent out of shape, leaving a corpse. Corpse is what? It's like a dead body, right? Where a tree used to be. It'll be like a dead body over there. In short, the exposure will leave the root vulnerable to all vagaries of weather, be it sun, be it rains, be it the chilled winters. Everything will affect in the sense, rather it will not affect, the tree will be as it is, right? So once those roots are exposed to it, when it has just fallen, the tree, that will affect it, but once it becomes a dead body type, so like a corpse, then nothing affects it, which will ultimately weaken the tree and kill it. This is how actually the tree is killed, literally killed. It is actually, wounded, it bleeds. That's how it is. Now, moving to the poetic devices. Okay, talking of repetition, out, the same word has been used in the same line more than once. See, please, if you forget your, your definitions, please move back to the previous slide where you have the definitions. Refer to it and come back. It will be easy for you to understand it rather than memorize it. Yeah? Understanding makes things more clearer. Enjambment, and pulled out, snapped out or pulled out entirely. It is a continuous line, a running line without a pause or a punctuation. You have an enjambment here as well. And the strength of the tree exposed to the source, white and wet, a running line. Then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air. Again, there is no pause, no punctuation. It's a continuous, it is a running line. Yeah. Alliteration, you have white, wet. It is the repetition of the first letter. White, wet. Yeah. Then we come to the climax. Now, climax, remember, it was a series of, stages of growth or ascending order. So, first it browns up, then it hardens, then it twists, and then it dries off. That's the way the tree, when it is uprooted, gets killed. So, it is an ascending order. This is the way the cycle, the process happens where the tree actually dries up. That's the reason it's showing a climax. It's giving you the stages. Yeah. And like I'm telling you, if you've understood the definition, see, here you might just memorize. Maybe you're very familiar. You might keep reading and reading. You will know this line is this figure of speech or this poetic device. But if you have it in an unseen poem, then what? Then how will you do it? And make sure you don't lose a single mark, because look, guys, you have your definitions. You actually have the most simple version of the definition for you to understand. So please just make an effort. Take the trouble to understand it once and for all, and then you're sorted. You can just keep moving on. Yes? Now, let's see the final message that it gives us. If I were a tree. Now, it's very beautifully said by Maggie Steve Waiter. If I were a tree, I would have no reason to love a human. Obviously, why would you love a human that harms you? You think you're going to love that person, that human, whom you give shelter, whom you give fruits, whom you give shade, and the same human, the same people actually kill you down, maybe to come up with a building or some kind of, construction. So yes, why would anybody love a human for that matter? So please keep your humanity, love nature, love the trees. Yes, for more such values, please keep watching and keep learning.